lecture about the fall of the House of Usher and the Gothic story. Actually, this is really about the Gothic characteristics of the fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. The story that we're reading is a large part of our semester, and we are also going to use the fall of the House of Usher as a part of our writing for the last paper of the course. I've spent about an hour and a half looking at videos on YouTube about the Gothic novel. There are bunches of them. There's a YouTube about, which tells the whole story of the fall of the House of Usher. You can listen to that, and many things about Poe and about the Gothic. But I wanted my own list, which I prefer over the ones that I saw this morning on YouTube. I was trying to be lazy, and I guess it just didn't work out. The Gothic, I want to tell you the materials that I'm using. I'm using a book by Joan Lundblad, Lundblad, which is about the displaced Gothic. I'm going to talk about that some. It's about Nathaniel Hawthorne and the Gothic tradition is the name of her book. And it's an old book, but one that I have liked and used for many years. I am also using a book, and I'm going to read you just a few passages from this book, a wonderful book, How to Read Literature Like a Professor. It has a great index, which is very important. I get angry if there's no index, and it's very helpful. And I'm going to tell you what he has to say about the fall of the House of Usher. This is Thomas C. Foster is the writer of that book, and it's very, very helpful for many things. Now, the Gothic novel. The first Gothic novel was written by Horace Walpole in 1764. It's called The Castle of Otranto. I think it's a very good book, but it started the Gothic tradition. And of course, we have Gothic architecture with all the arcs, and part of that came from literature where people wanted to create their own ruins. And it's a very European tradition, but of course it came straight to the United States, and we've made good use of it. There are Gothic novels written all the time, romantic/Gothic, and many of them are lots and lots of fun. They're not great literature, maybe, but they're lots and lots of fun. One of my favorite is, I'm going to lose her name. She has two pen names. She writes under Elizabeth Peters some books set in Egypt. And her name is actually Barbara Mers. So she's deceased now. Anyway, she's written some wonderful Gothic novels, so you can look her up. They are, what do we call them? Popular fiction. Not great literature, but they're lots of fun to read. And of course, because if it's Halloween, you're going to see a lot of Gothic things. This particular year, my granddaughter is going, it was as Morticia, she got some strings of white hair to put, extensions, they call them. So she's having lots of fun going to a dance dressed as Morticia. That is very much, that is kind of ironic, Gothic. So you're going to see Gothic characteristics everywhere. I've got to get on. Okay, so here are the Gothic characteristics I wanted to talk about. Most Gothic novels have a young woman as the central character. Jane Eyre is one of them. Usually a virgin. That has changed as we have come into the 21st century, and it's really hard. One of the bad things about writing a Gothic novel nowadays is everybody has a cell phone. And also, it's hard to come up with women quite as stupid, if you'll excuse the word, as some of the women in Gothic novels. You know, they always fall in love with the bad guy, never get that the good guy's the good guy. And they don't call the police. I've gotten aggravated this week watching some British mysteries where the detective, and I do love detective stories and Gothic novels and mysteries, but the detective goes all by himself or herself when all he had to do was call. You know, they're not supposed to do that, the police. So, you know, in early Gothic novels, the young woman always finds herself, you know, everybody saying, don't go there, and they do. So, matter of fact, there's a commercial like that. They say, why don't we get in the car and just drive away? Oh no, and they go in where all these knives and axes are. Okay, so that's one characteristic. It carries over to the European, from the European to the American. The second thing is, usually in European Gothics, there's a big castle, often falling down, decaying, as there is, of course, in The Fall of the House of Usher. In American Gothic, what Umblad calls displaced Gothic, it's an old house, usually in disrepair. One of my favorite stories, and it is a Gothic story, is by William Faulkner. It's A Rose for Emily. And Miss Emily lives in an old southern town in an old house on the main street, and it's falling down. I wanted to read to you a little bit, and of course, now that I've talked so much, my voice will go. This is Geography Matters section of the book. How to read literature. In Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, the narrator spends the opening pages describing a landscape and a day as bleak as any in literature. We want to get to the titular house, the title house, of course, to meet the last appalling members of the Usher clan. But Poe doesn't want us to get there before he's prepared us. Now, this is the third characteristic. The young virgin, or not, the spooky house, or castle, and thirdly, extremes of nature. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Poe doesn't want us to meet the Usher clan before he's prepared us. He treats us to a singularly dreary tract of country, to a few rank sedges and white trunks of decayed trees, to the precipitous brink of a black and lurid tarn, a pond, a lake, so that we're ready for the bleak walls of the house with its vacant, eye-like windows, and its barely perceptible fissure, break, crack, zigzagging its way down the wall, right to the sullen waters of the tarn. Never perhaps have landscape and architect and weather, it's a particularly dingy afternoon, merged as neatly with mood and tone to set a story in motion. That's why you must read the introduction in the original as Poe wrote it. You have to get the mood and tone. We are nervous and dismayed by this description before anything else has happened. So, of course, when things do begin happening, when we meet Roderick Usher, one of the creepiest characters to ever grace the pages of a story, he can't give us the creeps because we already have them. But he sure can make them worse, and he does. Actually, the scariest thing Poe could do to us is put a perfectly normal human specimen in that setting where no one could remain safe. And that's one thing landscape and place, geography, can do for a story. All right, so we've got young woman, big castle or spooky house. There is a young woman in Poe's story too, that is falling apart, and extremes of nature, weather, the landscape. Now, this becomes very important in later writing of the Gothic novel, and probably from the beginning, because we do have all of these modern things like telephones and so forth, cars. But with the extremes of nature, you can cut people off, as they were in recent hurricanes. We have an old story, it's a true story. My mother and some friends were playing bridge at my uncle's fishing camp, a little cabin they had. And the bridge washed out, and they were stuck there playing bridge evidently all night long. So it was pretty safe. But extremes of nature, you can cut people off where the police can't get to them because of these extremes of nature, of weather. It's fun to talk about volcanoes or earthquakes might fit into a Gothic novel. Okay. There is always art. This is number, I think, 4. There are documents and wills, 5. Curses, a will, a birth certificate, a will that says so-and-so should have inherited the place, a family curse, in something written in a Bible often. There are physical deformities. Now, one of my favorite, this is, I think, number 6. You all can come up with, I hope you're writing this down because it's going to be on the test. There are physical deformities. One of my favorite movies is Young Frankenstein, which is one of the funniest movies ever been made. And in that movie, the servant has a hump, I'll think of his name in a minute, has a hump on his shoulder, and he moves it. Sometimes it's on one shoulder and sometimes it's on the other. It's very, very funny. But of course, the physical deformities are not usually funny in Gothic stories. So, by the way, that Young Frankenstein is a spoof on the Gothic novel. So you might want to watch that. It's just loads of fun if you haven't seen it. I can't believe it's never been remade, but it couldn't be as good as the original. All my children can quote from that. Okay, so physical deformities. Certainly, I don't know if you consider their deformities, but neither of the Usher children are absolutely normal. And they're both, Roderick is, well, you'll read the story if you haven't already. Roderick is pale and his blood is evidently not circulating very well. All right. Number 7 is Italians or Mediterranean types. Now remember, this started in England. So people with dark skin, of course, in the United States, this is displaced. In the displaced Gothic, it is African Americans usually. And in the South, Gothic novels, early Gothic novels, often discuss slavery. And so slaves are often the Mediterranean or Italian types. The gypsies, the outsider are often in these novels. I talked about the extremes of nature. There is religion in many Gothic stories. I think that's 9. 10 is mesmerisms, the supernatural. We don't actually see a ghost or think about ghosts in this story, but boy, if you watch any of the horror movies that are around. And these novels, these stories, Gothic, they are the basis of every horror movie you can ever see. Okay? They are the basis. That's where it came from. And Poe, I think, is central to any discussion of the horror story, the detective story. He's the father of the detective story. And these things that we see owe so much to him. I wanted to get back to the art just one moment because I think that I omitted too much there. Art can be pictures on the wall. You've seen movies where the eyes in the picture move as the people walk by. That's art. Eerie music and sounds. That's one thing. If you get on YouTube and listen to a lecture about the Gothic, you'll be hearing some spooky music. Also, in The Fall of the House of Usher, they read a story. And there is a story within the story, much like Shakespeare, the play within the play in Hamlet. The story within the story, which relates to what is happening at the House of Usher. So that is the art. I didn't want to leave that out. All right, there's magic and mesmerism, the supernatural. Mesmerism is hypnotism, and there's some sort of indication of that in this story. There are medieval trappings. One of the most fun is people falling over what am I trying to say? Iron stuff in the hallways, coats of armor. Thank you very much. Armor, people in Gothic homes always have statues of people that with their iron. Anyway, I didn't do that part very well, so you can skip that. And finally, I think the very last thing, number 11 or 12, I lost count. I think this is 11, is a despicable crime. And I wanted to read you from, this is page 112 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor. I have a little drink here. This is Foster again. In The Fall of the House of Usher, the host, Roderick Usher, and his sister Madeline are the last survivors of an old aristocratic family. Living in a decaying mansion surrounded by a forbidding landscape, they are themselves decaying. She has a progressive wasting disease, while he is prematurely aged and decrepit, and decrepit, his hair nearly gone and his nerves shot. He behaves, moreover, like a madman, and there is more than a slight hint at incestuous closeness between brother and sister. In both of these tales, The Mask of the Red Death and The Fall of the House of Usher, Poe offers criticism of the European class system. I think this transfers straight to any class system, which privileges the unworthy and the unhealthy, where the entire atmosphere is corrupt and decaying, where the results are madness and death. The landscape of Usher resembles no part of America Poe ever saw. Even the appellation House of Usher suggests European monarchy and aristocracy. The houses of Bourbon or Hanover, for example. rather than an American place or family. Roderick has buried his sister alive, possibly knowing she wasn't dead, certainly becoming aware of it as the story progresses. As time in the story progresses. Now, why would he do a thing like that? When she escapes, having clawed her way out, she falls into his arms and they collapse on the floor, both dead. The narrator narrowly escapes before the house itself pulls apart and crashes into the black and lurid tarn. And crashes into the black and lurid tarn at its base, the pond, the lake. If all of that doesn't suggest an unhealthy, unholy, and distinctly un-American relationship between brother and sister, then one of us is missing something. Okay, so there is, I think, more than one despicable crime in the fall of the House of Usher. Certainly incest is implied over and over. Never stated clearly, of course. There is also, of course, the little thing of burying your sister alive is not really the nicest thing. That I would call a despicable crime. So incest is one of the biggies. Patricide, the murder of, or matricide, the murder of a parent, a brother or a sister. Infanticide, many Gothic stories have, the discovery of the bones of a newborn child in the attic or something. So infanticide is one of those horrible, horrible crimes. Okay, this is my list of, I think, 11 or 12, but I think 11 characteristics. I'm going to run through them really quickly. Young women are virgins, a big castle, art, documents, physical deformities, Italians, gypsies, or dark-skinned people, extremes of nature, religion, mesmerism and the supernatural, medieval trappings, and a despicable crime. Okay? Those are the characteristics. Please read the story. There are all kinds of helps on the internet, but you gotta at least read the first part of the story in Poe's own words, not some updated or summarized version. Okay? Enjoy. It's spooky.